Ladies and gentlemen, as the reply speaker for the opposition, I would like to take a step back. Let's look at this debate in totality. First, I would like to address the fact that proposition has failed to address any contentions, our policy, and our yardstick and burden in our case. And silence means consent in a debate, so they clearly agree. Our first contention, just to remind you, was that government produces compromise. They said, yes, we love government. We don't stand for anarchy. So that contention stands. And our second contention, again, was that anarchy inevitably leads to conflict. Now, they agreed that with this. They said anarchy is completely bad, that we need to learn from the bad things about it. So they agree with our contentions, and for that reason, our case stands. Let's just go ahead and move on to their case. Their entire case has centered around, and it depends upon the definitions, and we have had a huge definitional debate during the debate. So you have heard from us why we believe that the definitions should be the way they are, but in this reply speech, I'll use this time, just like my third speaker, to say even if we go with their definitions, their case does not stand. Their first contention deals with this idea of the equality of opportunity, and they said that because the government is an elitist body, we need to learn from anarchy. However, they failed to connect the dots. How, if we have anarchy and have a lack of government, how does that create a classless society? How do we then create equality of opportunity? Because we believe that that's what capitalism and governments do for the people, and this is not what anarchy will ever do. And for that reason, even if we go with their definitions, their first contention still falls because we cannot learn from that. Their second contention was that governments can learn from anarchy, even though it has never happened and never exists. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they told us that there were two things that we could learn from anarchy, or the lack thereof, anarchy. The first thing was governments can see how to prevent it. We can learn how to prevent this chaos, and we can prevent having governments ever fall. Well, ladies and gentlemen, why do governments need to learn to prevent something that can never be implemented? We agreed that anarchy can never be implemented. Both sides agreed on that at the beginning of the debate. So then why do governments need to learn how to prevent something that can never be implemented? The logic there does not make sense. You don't need to learn to prevent something that has never happened. And for that reason, this contention does not stand. Their second idea about what you can learn from it was this idea of equality of opportunity, which is the same as their first contention. This is circular logic. They have not had a separate case. But anyways, I'll address it again. So how is this equality of opportunity? How do we get there? How does anarchy, this lack of government, how does that lead to a classless society? They haven't proven this to us. And then we brought up this whole idea this is what communism gives us. So why do we need anarchy? Why do we need a separate political ideology that says the exact same thing as communism, which actually exists and that actually is in the modern world that we could actually draw from historical examples? Why do we need something that has never existed and will never exist? They have failed to address it and failed to ever come back to this. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to end this debate with a discussion of the yardstick and burden that they never addressed. I set the yardstick and the burden in my first opposition speech. The yardstick, I said that the opposition must prove to you today why government is necessary and desirable. We both agreed on that. Clearly, we have upheld our yardstick and we have upheld our burden of clash. Their burden today was to prove that the lack of government is beneficial. They have failed to do so. They say government is beneficial. And their second was to say that this ideology is realistically implementable. Their entire case rests on their definitions, and therefore they have not proven to us why this ideology is realistically implementable, and we are proud to oppose. Thank you.
Judges, the time was 3:20. The next team has 1 minute
to approach the podium.
Yeah, I know. Just tell me when to start. Thank you. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, may I please remind you that this is a theoretical debate. The opposition has stated that we have not provided any examples of how anarchism can work when it is placed in government. This is because it has not worked, and it will never work. Anarchism is a political ideology. May I remind you, anarchism is a political ideology that argues for the dissolution of government. They argue that government is necessary, and that we have not conflicted with them. That is because we agree with them. We agree that government is necessary because it provides compromise. We agree that government is necessary because it provides stability and it represents the voice of the people. That is because we are not arguing for the dissolution of government. We are not arguing for the implementation of anarchy. We are arguing that governments today are flawed, and they can amend these flaws by learning from the political ideology that is anarchism. The opposition maintains that anarchism is not a political ideology because it has never been implemented. This is a leap of logic. Was communism not considered a political ideology when it was first conceived of as, quote unquote, words on paper? Was communism not a political ideology before the creation of the Bolshevik government? A political ideology and a philosophy are essentially the same thing. The difference is that a political ideology has people to stand for it, people who believe in it and who agitate for it to be implemented. We never stated that these people exist, simply that anarchism should never be implemented. These people do exist. We know of them. They exist in America. They exist all around the world, but they are not in the government, and we should all be thankful for that. However, we do believe that the American government and the governments of all the countries around the world can learn from them. And this goes back to our contentions, which I would like to now affirm. First of all, we stated that anarchism is a valuable political ideology because it encourages equality of opportunity. This is where it differs from communism. Communism is a political ideology which argues for equality of income. Anarchism is a political ideology that argues not only for the dissolution of government, but also, and this is the critical part, also that all people are equal and they all deserve to start from the same place. The dissolution of government would mean that all people are not, that the people of upper middle class and upper class are not being favored, and therefore that everybody starts off from the same foot and builds their wealth from there. We stated that anarchism represents, and this helps them to reach their individual potential. Our second contention is that governments and people can learn from the ideology of anarchism, both from the good and from the bad. The good side of anarchism is that it argues for equality. Governments themselves are inherently flawed. We have stated this over and over and over again. Governments are made up of people who we want to lead us. They're made up of people who are educated and intelligent, and therefore they are made up of people from the upper and middle class. They do not fully represent the whole of society. This is why anarchism can help governments to become more equal and to represent society more, because they can draw from this. This is why the proposition has the burden of proof, and the opposition has the burden of clash. However, they have not clashed against our arguments. This is why we continue to believe that anarchism is a valuable political ideology. Thank you.
Judges, the time was 3:28.
While we go, is it okay to leave our stuff here?
All right, the procedure that will happen now is we'll ask that everyone leave the room besides the judges. Okay. Okay, you want to go in the next room over here? Okay. All right, so they will go to the next room and finish their ballots, and then in about 10 minutes they will actually come back into the room, and then they will speak to the delegates and give them constructive feedback.